Hi, everyone. Welcome to our webinar, which is the very first that we've hosted are hosting for you guys in the trade. And thank you so much for making the time to join us. We're just going to wait a minute or two for a few more of the attendees to join, and then we'll get cracking on our webinar and discussion with you. Let me know with a thumbs up in the chat box if you can hear our audio correctly. Feel free to either raise your hand or chat. Thank you so much, Petra. And Adele, excellent. Thanks, everyone. Thank you for letting me know that you can hear us clearly. Some familiar names here. Petra, I know you and I have met before, and Tessa, we've connected before. There's a lot of people that I don't recognize here, and I look forward to connecting with you in person in the future. But yeah, thank you so much. It would be great if you could just let us know which country you're from. So while we wait for the rest of the attendees to join, if you could just put it in the chat box, let me know where you're from. Lara, Journeys with Purpose, South Africa, Netherlands, lovely. We've got Durban represented, Kenya, Pretoria, amazing. We've got Claudia from Switzerland, Suzanne from the UK, Patricia in South Africa, wonderful. Lenka from Pretoria. Thank you for that. Okay. We'll give it a minute more and then we'll start the discussion. But yeah, it's a beautiful day in Johannesburg. We're expecting some rain. I hope you guys in the Netherlands and Belgium and Switzerland are doing well and that you're enjoying the cooler weather on your side. So we're heading into quite a summer down south. Okay. Right, I'm going to start and we can, whoever else joins can just follow through as we continue with the presentation. But I would love to introduce you to our team. We've got PJ Massyn and Harald van Lennep. So I haven't briefed them on what I would like to introduce them as, but I've PJ is our CEO. He's one of the most modest people that I've met, and he quietly works behind the scenes to effect a lot of change. A lot of things, a lot of people meet him along the way, but what people don't know is that he used to be an activist during the apartheid era. And he was even in exile. And he returned in the early 90s back to South Africa. And he's really a very passionate individual who respects everyone that he meets. And I'm hoping that a lot of you get a chance to meet him as our CEO because he is the founder of this business and One thing that really stands out about PJ is that when he tells us tales about his adventures and his travels around the world, he's an amazing storyteller, and we are just sitting there in awe of what he says. He makes us feel as if he's taking us through that journey with him. And yeah, so I'm very happy that PJ is joining us today as my co-presenter on this webinar. And then we've got Harald, who is our Chief Operating Officer. And Harald is a late entry into the tourism sector, but he is somebody that puts his heart and soul into everything that he does. He really is an individual that we call on when we need anything fixed, because he pays the closest attention to the tiniest of details. And I've seen how he puts a lot of love and care into each project that he works on, whether it's an upgrade or a new build or a refurbishment. Harold really is somebody that cares, and he subscribes very strongly to making a positive impact. He's also the fittest individual in our office. So Harold really takes care of his health. And yes, so without further ado, I'm going to delve straight into our deck. And I want to invite PJ to share a little bit about his journey and Return Africa. Essentially, he is the gentleman that has started this business. PJ, over to you.
Thanks very much, Nirvani, and thanks for those very kind words. They're very exaggerated, but thank you so much, and thank you to you and your team for bringing together this magnificent turnout. I'm really delighted to see so many people on the screen, and we've been very privileged to have Nirvani, who is such a professional. With so much experience that goes back decades in the industry, who joined us earlier this year. So thanks very much, Nirvani. I'm going to be very brief because I know we really want to get to the nitty-gritty to them. But as Nirvani mentioned, I've had a very long association with particularly that northern part of what was the Kruger Park, still is managed as an integral part of Kruger, but which is the ancestral home of the Makuleke people. And I had the privilege, which was really life-changing for me, more than 3 decades ago, just before the end of apartheid, to meet the Makuleke people and to work together with them on their land claiming back their ancestral land. And we worked then on the idea of creating a win-win outcome. It's a cliche, but we wanted one where this magnificent piece of Africa, which we'll talk about in the course, and you'll get some sense of it in the course of the presentation, but to retain that for conservation, and yet to restore ownership and dignity to the Makuleke people. And that's the partnership that emerged over the years. In '98, the land claim was settled under the new dispensation. And I, in the early years, then worked with the Makulekes on the development of some tourism concessions in the area to try and create value for the Makuleke people, but also to share the area which had previously been closed to the public. And that led to first the outpost and then later wilderness safaris entry into the area. I had a small share there and worked alongside the Makulekes until 2013, when that river that you see behind me came down in anger and washed away the wilderness camp. Wilderness decided to withdraw from the area, and we then founded Return Africa. And that was really the founding sort of act of Return Africa. We entered into a concession with the Makulekes, rebuilt Pafuri camp, and developed the set of facilities and experiences that you'll see presented to you today. a few years later, we moved into the Western Cape with Welgelegen and more recently an African Story. And we're very proud that all our products, our facilities, are fully managed by, and I'm going to say it, Black South Africans. In the case of Pafuri, by the Makuleke people themselves. So it's been a great journey for me. I always say it's a labor of love. It's like an old marriage, for better or for worse. It kind of consumes one. But we look forward to sharing this with you, and we hope to have your support going forward. Just last note for me, as we move forward, we are looking to continually improve the sustainability of our business. We're looking at some further empowerment involvement in our businesses. We are looking to further invest in our solar plant, our solar energy, and to ensure that our businesses are not only based on people, which is the founding principle of our business, looking after people, partnering with people, building dignity, but also that it is fully sustainable. Thanks, Nirvani.
Thank you so much, PJ. So what is really inspiring is that for me as an individual to work for a company like Return Africa, it really is about effecting positive change. It's about making a tangible difference. And us in the tourism industry and those of us who've worked around different organizations, that's what we want. We want things that inspire us. We want to visit places that really are making change that we can see. And something about Makuleke and the Pafuri camp in particular is that you can see the authenticity and the community display is not anything that's curated. It's really about people welcoming you to their home, and that's what Return Africa is all about. It's about welcoming our guests to our home, and that's a lot of positive feedback that we get from our guests who are repeat guests. I just want to go back to PJ, and I want you to tell them why you decided on the word Return Africa for your business.
Well, we sometimes ask ourselves, but it just seemed, I guess, Sandra, who was a very close colleague of mine, and I were we both left South Africa in the 80s and returned after the change. So we were returnees. So, but it also activates a whole lot of other possibilities. One is the return of land to those who were dispossessed and lost. Under apartheid, we wanted our guests to become part of a return family, and we are very blessed to have a loyal guest base in the north. We call them Pafurians. They return again and again, and we also wanted to create returns for our people and partners while sustaining this great area, this under conservation. So return just had, we always say we want to wish our guests many happy returns. So we were just playing with the ideas that that sort of are inherent in that word.
Thanks, PJ. Yeah, that's very hard to capture in a social media narrative or in a marketing newsletter as such. So thank you for sharing that. Okay, so I'm going to delve straight into the deck. And please feel free, should you have any questions, you're welcome to use the chat box. You're also welcome to raise your hand, and I can pause and answer the question. You have the option to unmute yourself on your screens. And enjoy the conversation. All right, so we've got two areas that we operate in. We refer to our collection in the Pafuri area as our Pafuri collection because it encompasses 4 products. One is the Pafuri camp, which is our flagship camp. And some of you will notice that we dropped tented from our name, and we now refer to it as Pafuri camp. We've got 2 seasonal walking camps, which is Hutwini and Nkula, and we'll go through those options as we speak through the deck. And then we've got an exclusive home, which is called Baobab Hill House. Then in Cape Town, we've got two beautiful, beautiful accommodations called Valkyrie House. Many of you are already supporting this property. And we've got an African Story down in Camps Bay. So this map is really a graphical representation of where the Makuleki Contractual Park sits. We've got the mighty Limpopo River. It's the second largest river in South Africa. It feeds into the Indian Ocean. And our camp sits on the banks of the Luvuvu River. Excuse me. So on the southern part of this map, you will see the Luvuvu River flowing and meeting the Limpopo River. And to the east of that is the confluence where Zimbabwe, South Africa, and Mozambique meet. So our guests also have the opportunity to visit that site, which is named Crook's Corner. And there's different versions of why it's called Crook's Corner. I'm sure PJ and Harold can share a little bit later on. But Nkula and Hutwini, as well as Baobab Hill House, are between 5 and 10 minutes away. You'll also be able to see that we've got our own airstrip, which is another 5-10 minute drive away from Pafuri Camp. And we'll talk a little bit later about access. Something that's really exciting is on this map, which is the southern representation on that map called Tulamela Ruins. It's quite a prominent site. We will share more detail about that. And at the end, there's a mini documentary that I'd love to invite you to watch to learn a little bit about what the site represents for us as a country and also for Africa and the story of humanity. So moving on to the Pufuri collection, I will share a very brief video that gives you an oversight of the landscape, the kind of wildlife experience you have, that your guests can experience, and a little bit about the lodge. And it's a very quick one, so just bear with us and let us know with a thumbs up that you can actually hear the audio. Okay, so at this point, I'd like Harold and PJ to weigh in on the wildlife experience that we have. It's often a question that we get asked about the wildlife. PJ, maybe it's something that you can talk about, especially in terms of the predator dynamics, and we could pass on to Harold to talk about the birds because he's so passionate about that.
Thanks, Nirvani. Yeah, so we have an area of 26,000 hectares, so it's large. It's got a very low density of development, but it is extremely diverse, and so and it is unfenced to the north and to the south and to the east. So we're part of a big transfrontier area with big wildlife movements. The Luvuvu and the Limpopo valleys always have a good concentration of wildlife. It varies. Right now, we're at the end of our dry season. There's a huge spectacle unfolding as the game is concentrated into the valley. The grazers have to go right to the edge of the water, and the crocodiles are having a feast. But we have a good general game viewing experience. Large herds of elephant, buffalo. They depending on conditions, they distribute across the concession and to the south, and even across into Zimbabwe and Mozambique. Um, uh, uh, you typically on a game drive, you'd be seeing kudu, nyala, but we have a large eland population on the property, a lot of smaller game, and so zebras across the river, wildebeest, giraffe that have moved into the area in larger numbers recently. As far as predators are concerned, we have a good resident leopard population, especially along the Luvubu. We have a dominant hyena population that we've recently had someone study and photograph. So we have a hyena spectacle, which is second to none. They tend to be the apex predators, competing with leopard and with lion. We have had lion reintroductions into the area by sandparks. They haven't established resident prides, but they move through the area from time to time. And then we have the great crocodiles especially the Luvubu River that you saw in that video. And there's a very interesting dynamic at that apex level between the predators. But perhaps I can ask Harald to say one or two things as well.
I'd love to. Hello, everyone. I came out of the engineering industry, having spent 20 odd years working in that. And arriving at Return Africa, I just want to sort of emphasize something that PJ mentioned earlier, and Nirvani, which is that I came out of an industry which was full of dust, industry, noise, commotion, destruction, and relatively unhappy people, into an industry which is exactly the opposite. Pafuri in particular is just a beautiful place. It is constantly changing. It is dynamic. You will never experience the same thing at Pafuri if you come twice. No matter what the season. I mean, it changes with the seasons like everywhere, but it changes from year to year, month to month, because it is such an open system, and it is affected by weather patterns and movement of birds, success of certain species over others. It's an ever-changing, dynamic, and wonderful place. Very, very beautiful. Spectacularly so, more so than anywhere else in South Africa in the bush. It has relief, it has mountains, it has gorges, it has rivers, it has floodplains, it has riverine forests, it has typical savanna bush. And all of those things give rise to this incredible diversity which PJ mentioned. The birds are extraordinary. We have up to 450 species of birds that can be seen in Pafuri. Birders come from all over the country and all over the world to witness that spectacle, which is at its zenith in the summer period when the rains come, and migrants from Europe and Central Africa and the Far and the East, they come all the way down and they reach as far as Pafuri and seldom go further into South Africa. So Pafuri is the epicenter of birding in Southern Africa during those summer months. That's what I would like to add about the wild. And of course, just one more thing. From Pafuri Camp itself and from the other products, you are very much on the Luvubu River. The Luvubu River is a perennial river. It runs all year through, and it's the only constant source of water in the northern part of the Kruger Park. You have to go, PJ, 150 kilometers before you reach the next permanent water source. So it attracts animals and birds to its banks and to the water. It's the lifeblood of the northern part of the Kruger. So when you are in your camp on the main decks in your tent or on the main decks at camp, you are constantly seeing this parade of animals and birds going down to the water in front of you, and you are never bored. You are always entertained. Over to you, Nirvani.
Yeah, thanks, Harold and PJ. So, what we really want our trade partners and our guests to understand well before traveling to Pafuri is that there is an abundance of wildlife and bird life. And the perception that we are sparse is completely untrue. And, there's a lot of misperceptions about Pafuri that we are hoping this kind of interaction can change. So I'm going to go back to the deck. Sorry about the black screen, but I'm hoping that everyone can see it. And if you can't, please just type it into the chat box. But this is a QR code to our agent zone on the website where you can access additional information such as our fact sheets. On the website, we've also got recent blogs that we've put. There's recommendations on what can be seen during the summer months. There's a discussion on the hyena review or sort of, I'm not going to use the word research, but it was a review of the hyena population that is around Pafuri. And this is all available on our blog, but please can you connect via the agent zone? Our rack rates are there, obviously, but you're most welcome to reach out to me for STO if you've not received them already. And I know some of you, especially those of you who are living outside of South Africa and operate through different channel partners, I know who you are, and I know that you work with different ground handlers on the here in South Africa to facilitate your STO. Okay, so Pafuri Camp, 1910. So it is a fairly larger camp relative to some of the other lodge experiences that you get further south. But that works to our favor. We have 1910s, although it says 20. Number 8 had washed away in the floods that PJ alluded to earlier. And we've got rooms that can accommodate a family of 4. So you will notice the black dots, number 1, 6, 7, 9, 10, 11, and 12 are family units. And we have 2 adults sharing with 2 kids. We do recommend that those kids who are older rather take their own room. And the reason is simply because some of the rooms are open plan. Well, all of the rooms are open plan in terms of the bathroom. And there is a shower curtain and a curtain that closes off the toilet area. But as you walk into the tent, which is covered in thatch and tented structures, you will walk into the top middle image, which is the standard room layout. And then behind that bedpost where those birds are is the bottom middle image. And that's the flip side where you have the bathroom mirror and the open plan bathroom. For those 7 family rooms that we have, or units that accommodate families, we then have an extension at the back behind the bathroom that leads into the bedroom that we would like to accommodate kids at, where you've got twin beds at the back. We recommend against doing more than 2 adults in a room, especially because of the open plan bathroom. And a little bit about the baobabs and the forests. My background on the picture that you see behind me is this beautiful fever tree forest. And this image is of the baobabs. I'd like to invite PJ to share a little bit about these forests. And he has written a bit that we've put out on social media, especially on the fever tree forest. But it is quite a prominent discussion point for anyone that is visiting Pafuri. So over to you, PJ.
Yes, and I think Harold can certainly come in as well. One of the great features of the Pafuri landscape is its trees. And because of the diversity of landscapes, we have a great diversity of plant life, including trees. So in the ridges, we have these ancient baobabs, one of which has been dated back 1,600 years, 1,600 years. We call it the big baobab. We found an even bigger one, which is away from all the tracks recently. But the landscape is dotted with baobabs, and they've always been entwined with a human habitation in the area, which goes back many, many thousands of years. And there's a whole story to be told there. So we have these great giants that are dotted along around the landscape, associated with human and wildlife in a great abundance. And then on the floodplain, especially along the Lububu and along the Limpopo, on the alluvial soils, we have vast stands of mature riverine forest, great trees. The most visited and celebrated is what we call our fever tree forest, which Nirvani and Harald will speak more about. But we also have great mature stands of a variety of other species. So the trees of Pafuri are a dominant part of anyone's experience in the area. Harald, do you want to say something?
I'm fearful of taking up too much time.
Yeah.
The forests are extraordinary. That we've got a few that we give names to, and obviously the fever tree forest is one. If I can just briefly touch on that, it's when the Makaleke were forced from their land in 1969, the fever tree forest didn't exist, and it only started growing shortly after that when floods swept seeds which came down the Limpopo and upstream into the Lububu and then spread across that particular floodplain. And fever tree forests or fever trees don't last that long. They're not long-lived trees like baobabs. They only last maybe 70 or 80 years. So our fever tree forest, our iconic fever tree forest, is getting towards end of life. But fortunately, and I can say this with a great sense of relief, we are getting a lot of new fever tree forests growing, particularly on the Limpopo floodplain. And that's very exciting to see because of one, they are in their youth, they are targets for elephants who love feeding on them. But fortunately, there's enough that we can see that there are going to be new magnificent fever tree forests growing there. One of my favorite places in Pafuri is actually called the Jackalberry Forest, which is also massive. They're otherwise known as ebony trees. And so our main camp is in the shadow of massive jackalberry trees, and on the southern shores of the Limpopo, on the northern part of the concession, we have a jackalberry forest, which like any forest anywhere in the world, when you go into these forests, they just have a different atmosphere. And each forest that we have at Pafuri, the fever tree forest, the jackalberry forest, the anna tree forest, they all have their own particular atmospheres. Almost cathedral-like in the case of the fever tree forest, mysterious and ominous in the case of jackalberry, and the anna tree forest is light, airy, and a great source of food for the many animals that feed on their pods, which fall the reverse side of the season for when normal trees fruit. I could go
thanks,
on, but
Harald.
I think that's enough.
Yeah. One thing I wanted to mention about the fever tree forest in particular is that we've hosted the most beautiful weddings there, including Harold's daughter who got married there. But it really is a spectacular wedding destination for anyone here in the room that wants to get married. Obviously, for your guests who want to look for a destination wedding here in South Africa as well. Karen, we have shared the YouTube video. That is the longer version. And the version that I played on this presentation is slightly shorter. Moving along, we've spoken about the Luvuvu River, but that is basically the view that you would have from all of your main areas, as well as your rooms from Pufuri Camp. Walking season, so that operates from April to October, and I just have to highlight that Southern Africa's got some absolutely spectacular walking destinations, starting with the home of walking safaris, which is South Luangwa. But there is something exceptionally spectacular about Pufuri's walking safaris, and this is not really my words. It's words from guides who have been there, private guides, guests who come back over and over to do walking with us every year. We have specialized walking safaris that we operate, but we still run walking activities out of Pufuri Camp throughout the year. So rest assured that if you've got guests that want to do walking as an activity outside of the period that our walking camps is open, they are most welcome, and we can certainly accommodate that. Now, this camp, Hutwini Camp, is our most recently refurbished one. It was a project that Harald and Exco, the rest of our team, including PJ and Sandra, who PJ mentioned earlier, worked very hard at to get up and running for this year's season. And we've made some significant changes to the way the camp looks and feels, as well as to the size of the tents. So this area here, let me just go back to this deck image, is where we've added a tented structure for the lounge and dining area. And this is just to give guests some respite from the heat. It's very cozy. PJ's referred to it as a little cozy bush camp. And we tend to agree. You will see next year in the next year STO rates that it is at a slight premium to our other walking camp, which is in Kula. And Hutwini really has a beautiful charm to it. The tents are slightly larger. They both operate on solar power and donkey boilers. And one thing that is really spectacular is that there's no Wi-Fi at Hutwini or at Nkula. There's a maximum of 8 people that we take on walks at any given time, and a private vehicle is available to both camps. What happens here in terms of the activities is that the guides will assess the guests' fitness levels and their interests and decide whether they want to walk out a whole day, a morning activity, an afternoon activity, or a couple of hours. And they would drive out to a particular spot to meet those requirements. And then should guests want to make use of the vehicle, they're most welcome to as an alternative to a walking activity. But this camp and Nkula would basically be the base. So as you can see, there's a deck that extends out of the tent. And in comparison to Nkula, which is slightly more rustic and considered, if I could use the very overused word, authentic, closer to nature. You don't have a tented structure here. And there's a lot of love for Nkula, especially guests who want a very simple experience. So just remember that it is operating on solar power, and there are flush toilets for both camps. Both camps can take a maximum of 8 people, so 4 tents sharing. And a bucket shower system here. We've never had any negative feedback on our camps of late. In terms of their experiences, they have been raving about it. Our guests come back very transformed and very appreciative of the natural environment where Pufuri exists. Just some images of the walking. And Harald, would you like to share anything that I may have missed out or incorrectly shared with everybody on walking?
I don't think so.
Yeah, okay.
I would just like to add something though. When you are in those camps, you spend the first few hours of the day out on foot, generally speaking, or on a vehicle if you wish to, and then you come back and you have those early afternoon hours, which are and you are in the bush. absolutely in the riverine forest. You're surrounded by bird sound. In the case of Hutuini, you can go and sit on the banks of the Luvu River, looking up at Tulamela, which is on a mountainside above you. And you get all sorts of animals walking through camp. You will get nyala, elephants literally feeding on your nyala berry pods or anna tree pods at your feet. You will get all sorts of antelope coming through. On occasion, there have even been leopards walking through camp while people are there. There are baboons, monkeys, lots and lots of birds. So you just are immersed in this life, and you really you feel very, very close to nature. Thank you.
Thanks, Harald. We've got a question from Karen. Karen asks about, do the clients check in at Pafuri camp and transfer to walking camps? Yes, that's correct. So all of our guests that come through to Pafuri camp, the walking safaris, as well as to Baobab, their first point of contact is at Pafuri camp, and that's where they would do the check-in and the induction. Our check-in team will go through the safety protocols. And there's a question that I think either PJ or Harald can answer. How is the walking level? Unfortunately, I've not done the walk yet.
The walking is tailored to meet the needs of the party. So the guides are very conscious of the needs of the party. So the walks are at the pace of the slowest person. But the point on walking safari is not to cover ground. It's to look at all the detail and enjoy it and take your time. So I've never heard of anyone complaining about the level of walking. If the party is fit and young and up to it, then they can take more mountainous routes up onto Hutuini Ridge, down into Lana Gorge. The walk through Lana Gorge is the most spectacular day that anyone could ever dream of in the bush. It is just incredible. That you need to have a relative degree of fitness for. But other walks through the Fever Tree Forest, along the Limpopo floodplain are very, very simple, very easy, and the walks will be tailored to the group. I think you should mention that most regularly people book out an entire walking camp, which is 4 rooms and 8 beds, and they're a party who know each other.
Okay, so Karen has asked a question: how prepared are we if something happens with health issues? So that's a health and safety concern, which is quite relevant because the camp is fairly far away from the nearest town. So I actually think, Harald, you can answer that one in terms of evacuations, etc.
Sure. So for general health and safety issues, we have a relationship with the Musina Clinic, I think it's called, Musina Clinic, or Medical Clinic. It's based in Musina, which is 150 kilometers away. So that is our quickest point of relief. So if something were to happen, they are on call 24 hours a day. They have a receptionist on call 24 hours a day, and they have about 8 doctors who work permanently at that clinic. And 1 or 2 of those are on call all through the night, every night. So if something were to happen, we, and if it's serious enough, we would immediately call them, and we would share details about the incident. Our walking groups are constantly in touch with main camp through radio, and they would give details. We would pass those across to the Musina Medi Clinic. They would give advice, and either we would travel towards Musina with the injured person, or they would travel to us, or both. In extreme circumstances, it's been agreed that they would send out their reaction vehicle, which is fully equipped paramedic vehicle, towards us, and we could meet them at a halfway point, in which case you're looking at about 3/4 of an hour between between loading them up and getting attention. But that is the arrangement we have. If necessary, we have the ability to call in air evacuation to get people back down to Johannesburg.
Thanks, Harold.
Yeah.
So
I'm
Christina's
mindful of
asked,
time. I just want to say one thing,
Yeah.
Nirvani, and that is that that medical partner we have in Massyn actually services the N1, the main national route, and a big mine in the Limpopo Valley. So they're very well equipped.
Thanks for that, PJ. Christina's asked if Godfrey and Enos are still managing the camp. Absolutely, yes. Godfrey and Enos are basically the guys on the ground that will take care of you, take care of our guests. Beautiful personalities, and being Makaleki themselves, they really do share a very personal experience of both Pafuri camp as well as the Makaleki concession. And they've both worked at the first camp as well as our camp. When I say the first one, I mean prior to Return Africa purchasing the camp. Okay, so I am also mindful that we are going slightly over our time, but I just want to highlight that at the end of this presentation or discussion, there's a beautiful documentary that I really encourage you guys to stay on to watch. No offense if any of you have to drop off. And I'm not rushing through the deck just to meet time, but I totally get that you guys might have another meeting and stuff planned. So I will continue as per what we've got, and the recording will also be sent through to you via Teams links. Okay, so Baobab Hill House is this beautiful country house that is sitting on our property. It used to be the Ex-Section Ranger's home. It has a very simple country style to it. Um, PJ loves this property because it really allows a family of 8 people, an extended family, to connect in a very private and intimate experience. You get your own private guide, private game vehicle. You've got a chef that is able to prepare whatever meals you need or your guests need. It has its own housekeeper and its own pool and its own boma area. So it is really intimate, and 4 bedrooms, all individually styled. There are 3 bathrooms, so 2 of these rooms do share a bathroom. And we've had some really amazing feedback. Our guests love this personalized touch and experience. And then something that I think is a common question: how do you get there? Why? Like, a lot of people consider that Pafuri, there's a perception, as I alluded to earlier, that Pafuri is really far. But if you consider that if you're in Johannesburg, it would take 6 hours to get to Skukuza, and it would take 5 hours to get to the Central Kruger area on the main national roads. But it also just takes 7 hours to get from Johannesburg to Pafuri on a very excellent road condition that has no potholes. It's a national road, and you literally make 2 turns and you're at Pafuri Gate. So it really is spectacular. I think we really need to break that misperception that Pafuri is hard to get to. And it is a narrative that I'm going out to the trade with. We've got our own aircraft. We're very proud of this because it allows us to get our guests to Pafuri much sooner than previously allowed. It is based between Hoedspruit and Pafuri, and it is between a 45-minute, 50-minute flight over to from Pafuri. We have scheduled it to be to tie in with your with your domestic flight arrivals into Hoedspruit Airport. We can fly our guests out of Hoedspruit Civil or out of Hoedspruit Eastgate, and also out of Kruger Mpumalanga International Airport. Those rates are available on our rate sheets. And just to note that the flights are not a commissionable rate. So please just note that you can add on your own markup, but we have decided to sell it to the trade at net cost. And some parts of that we do subsidize. We offer those flights on a minimum of 2 people. So please note that as well. And yeah, we're very happy to fly your guests over and just to ease access to Pafuri. Generally, we recommend that they combine something in the Hoedspruit area, Timbavati, Thornybush, Klaseri, Manileti area. It just helps to break the journey a little bit. But if your guests are coming from Cape Town or Johannesburg, we're very happy to pick them up. Obviously, weather dependent, so sometimes we may have to look at an alternative option if we get bad weather. As you guys know, you're very seasoned in the travel industry, so you know these things can happen over the rainy season. Okay, so alternative option, 7 hours self-drive from Johannesburg. And if guests are in Hoedspruit and they would like a cheaper alternative, we can arrange a transfer, which is a 5-hour drive, and guests exit and enter through the Punda Maria gate to access Pafuri. Okay, and we can also do daily tours over to the Thulamela ruins. Um, yeah, we've got this documentary at the end, which would give you a great insight into Thulamela. But maybe PJ, you can share a little bit about Thulamela, just in a brief, in a nutshell version, for those who may not be able to stay on.
Yeah, well, Thulamela is a smaller version of Great Zimbabwe, and it's a really spectacular spot on a hilltop. It's really a hilltop dry stone citadel. And we've got a group of historians and archaeologists doing some really interesting work. You can actually see them there, and they're discovering this really productive pre-colonial, not only trading but also manufacturing center that traded down to the east coast of Africa and from there into the global economy. So a really spectacular site. You'll see with those of you who do stay on for the documentary, it has an exceptional sense of place, magnificent views across the wild landscapes of Pafuri, and then it's linked into the great Zimbabwe culture that flourished in the Limpopo and related valleys, starting around 900 AD and going right up into the 18th century. Some excavations have been done, really interesting artifacts, including quite a bit of gold found on the site, and a lot of ongoing work. But a really wonderful half-day excursion, which takes you through magnificent landscapes, a lovely walk up the hill. So even if you're not interested in the human history, it's a wonderful excursion.
Thank you, PJ. Okay, so quite quickly, we're just going to breeze over Valgelegen and an African story, not because it's not significant. It really is a significant part of our portfolio, but because a lot of you are already selling it, and we know that you know Valgelegen House because it does come up quite prominently, not only on TripAdvisor, but from guest feedback. Guests have excellent responses to this property. Their experiences are very personalized. It's 2 Victorian homes that have been renovated. They sit in the suburb of Oranjezicht. So you're sitting on the foot of the Table Mountain with views from some of the rooms of Table Mountain. And it really is a spectacular experience because it's not a sanitized hotel experience. You've got your guest experience manager, your general manager, who really spends some time to connect with guests. Being 14 bedrooms, it allows your guests to feel like they are welcomed on a personal level. So it does, again, give the experience of home away from home. And the rooms are quite individually decorated, but very warm and welcoming. We've got 14 bedrooms, 2 of which can accommodate families. 1 room can accommodate a family of 2 adults and 1 child, and the second bedroom, 2 adults and 2 children. We have our own in-house vehicle that can do transfers and tours here, which I will show you in just a moment. And then the latest addition to our portfolio, some of you have heard of this, is An African Story. So An African Story sits in Camps Bay overlooking the beautiful Atlantic Ocean. It is a villa that has 4 levels to it, but the top 2 levels are the penthouse, or is part of the penthouse. And you've got your 3 bedrooms at the top, and you've got your main dining, lounge, kitchen, and entertainment area, as well as pool for the penthouse on the second level there from the top. Then below that, we've got the 3 bedroom apartment where we can accommodate 6 people. It's also got its own kitchen, dining, lounge, and entertainment area, as well as its own pool. And below that is the 2 bedroom option. And that is really spectacular for us, because we can offer it to the market as the whole villa, or we could offer just the penthouse, or just the 3 bedroom, or combining the penthouse and the 3 bedroom, or even just the 2 bedroom and the 3 bedroom as guests want. You will see segmented rates on our rate sheets, and it is quite a popular option now for our guests. Petra, I know that you've placed a booking. Your guests are coming to an African Story. Thank you so much for that booking. And I know it came through your ground handler. And we're very excited that our guests are receiving this experience really well. It comes with a villa host who is attentive and really able to cater to all guests' interests and needs. And it includes breakfast. So that's part of the inclusions. In terms of the actual main areas, you will see when anyone visits that there's some spectacular art on the site. The owner of the house is an art collector, and a mix of different pieces that are quite curated. And our guests enjoy that they can also be in a property that has this beautiful art there. The rooms are quite minimalist in terms of style and design. So you can see quite a strong Scandinavian touch to it. And we believe that this is part of the luxury experience. And yeah, any questions on an African Story before I quickly talk about transfers and tours? I don't see any in the chat box, so I'm going to continue. Transfers and tours. So as I said, we have our own vehicle. We're able to do airport transfers. We're able to do Cape Peninsula tours, city tours, wineland tours, which are the standard, but also based on guest interest, we can curate those tours. So without further ado, I'm going to continue to watch the chat box for any questions, but I'd like to quickly play this video, this mini documentary. It is 14 minutes long, so you can watch it in the background if you have the time, but it would give you a good sense of what Thulamela is. It aired on the History Channel, which is on DSTV in August, and we are privileged to have a copy of this that we can share with you. So thank you for all of you who have stayed on. No offense to anyone who has to drop off. Please feel free to watch the recording where the video can also be played. So I'm just going to go straight into the video.
In a remote northern corner of the Kruger National Park, watched over by enormous 2,000-year-old baobab trees, lies an ancient walled African kingdom. It existed for over 400 years before being mysteriously abandoned. This is the site of Thulamela.
And when you get there, these big baobabs, they welcome you. And you know what? I wish they can tell the story.
What excites me most from the Thulamela point of view is the fact that we have this pre-colonial African kingdom that we actually know very little about.
It captures a whole area of our history and period of our history which we should all know about, and which is quite fundamental to the making of South Africa.
For a long time, South Africa's documented history was European-based and considered to only really begin around 1652, when the Dutch sent Jan van Riebeck to colonize the Cape. But the discovery of sites like the remains of the great Iron Age kingdom of Thulamela proved that African traders were importing and exporting goods across the Indian Ocean long before that. The discovery of this walled kingdom could literally turn South African history on its head. Between the 13th and 17th century, this hilltop site was a successful trading route, importing goods from as far away as India and even China.
So it makes us rethink South African history altogether. Instead of starting in the Cape and moving into the interior, we realize that there's a whole other history which is playing out in the interior, which is hugely important and often neglected.
Professor Peter Delius claims that the flourishing Thulamela trade route is a key influence in establishing where South African history truly began.
In fact, when you look at Thulamela, which goes back to the 1200s, it's an example of a period of history which long precedes the history of white settlement. So it helps us rethink South African history in a very fundamental way.
In 1983, a park ranger on patrol discovered the Thulamela site in the remote Pafuri region in the northern tip of the Kruger Park.
The climb up the hill is in the saddle of this fairly impressive kopje that's in the area. You move your way slowly through the rocks, heading towards a very large baobab that sits kind of more or less in the middle of the saddle.
Archaeologist Dr. Tim Forsman has been astounded by the Thulamela site. For starters, the breathtaking view from the top of the hill, where the Luvuvu River joins the mighty Limpopo.
From that baobab, you turn to your right, and you kind of follow this trail of baobabs all the way up through until you eventually arise onto the top of this hill.
The kingdom's capital was strategically placed on a small hilltop. A stone citadel was built, and it's estimated that at least 1,000 people lived on the hill, and another 1,000 on the floodplain below.
You can make sure that any trader has to stop and to pay their respects, probably in trade goods.
This area is a unique place because it has got 75% biodiversity of the Kruger National Park. 75% of the things that you see in the park, you can only see them here. Kruger Park is 2 million hectares, which is about 20,000 square meters. So this area only forms 1% of the park.
Godfrey Pillay lives and works in the Pafuri region. His family have lived here for over 2 centuries.
Apart from that, amazing history. The history of the Thulamela people, the Iron Age history, and the history of the Makuleke people. So that makes it so special.
Historians have tried to understand the mystery of the rise of Thulamela. They've hypothesized that after the collapse of Great Zimbabwe in the 15th century, the residents headed south and crossed the Limpopo to create this thriving kingdom. The significance of Thulamela's great trading nation has been authentically reconstructed to reveal a glimpse into our past.
Although you might not realize it at first, you're looking up to the king's palace. This is where the king would have resided with his wives, and as you round that, you find these different partitions that have been walled off, some of them being residential areas, some being activity areas.
You can see there's a clear distinction between a kind of ruling group who tend to live up on the hill, which gives us an indication that there's centralized state power, that there's differentiation in the society, and that down below, living on the floodplain and around the river, would have been most of the population.
The lush floodplains of the Luvuvu and Limpopo rivers were the perfect fertile farmlands for these new settlers.
It's literally at the best part of this landscape to cultivate crops, to have your cattle be able to graze and to control trade, to use these corridors to the coastline and then protect yourself, because those hills are almost impenetrable. They're very difficult to walk through.
People here used to be very, very good in agriculture. They used to plow crops, mealies. That was their daily life. And some of them were very, very good in fishing and all those kind of things. So that was life, you know.
From Thulamela, the Limpopo River runs directly to the East African coast, where it empties into the Indian Ocean. This enabled trade with both Arabic and Portuguese merchants.
That Limpopo River provides you with access to the coast. It becomes a kind of highway, in a sense, moving any goods into the interior, and through that region, this river was a corridor.
It also linked to an Indian Ocean trading system via the East African coast, which spans the Middle East, India, China, Indonesia. They were trading primarily with the East African ports. So there's Shibawene, which is close to modern Villankoulos, and then later on Sofala, which is close to what is now modern Beira, are the crucial trade links. The global world didn't connect to South Africa at the Cape. The global world connected to South Africa through the coast into the interior.
In addition to trade, there's evidence that Thulamela was also a crucial production site. Skilled workers were extracting iron ore from nearby mines and converting it into iron to trade.
People were working with ivory, they were working with copper, they were working with gold, they were sewing, they were making cotton cloth. So it was like a huge production center, which is not often the way we think about African kingdom. But we know huge volumes of cotton were coming in from India and elsewhere. But what we also see at Thulamela is that cotton plants were imported. So you've got exotic cotton plants which are not indigenous.
At the site, clay spindles show evidence of a flourishing cotton industry. There are pieces of pottery and earthenware from cooking pots. Glass and ostrich egg trading beads are still scattered on the ground today, revealing a busy local community.
Glass beads were never produced locally, and we can tell that when we do mineralogical studies of the glass itself.
They've got a fascinating range of colors. We know where they're made, we know where the glass is made, we know where the beads are smelted, we know where they're coming from. We know they're not, in the main, being made in Africa.
As well as the import business, the export industry to Muslim and Asian traders was flourishing. Sadly, the big sales were in rhino horn, leopard skins, turtle shells, and of course, ivory.
The trading system was dominated by the export of ivory initially. It was inexhaustible. People would get as much ivory as they could take. And African ivory was particularly sought after because it was particularly good to work with, to carve, to turn into ornaments.
They'll bring pottery, they'll bring beads, and they'll bring it here and exchange that with ivory. In 1770, more than 85,000 tons of ivory were taken away from this area. That is equivalent of 2,000 elephants that were killed.
Today, the Pafuri area is abundant with game. This is a true testament to the commitment of the Kruger National Park and the work of the local community who've put a huge effort into protecting it.
What we are doing here at Pafuri means a lot to the future generations. The Makuleke people are the first people to claim the land in the Kruger National Park. And that is history. That alone is history. And we make sure that we do the right thing in terms of looking after the environment so that this area can sustain for the future.
Community leaders, historians and archaeologists work together to uncover more mysteries of Thulamela. Excavations carried out in the 90s revealed 2 burial sites on top of the hill. And so another mystery needed solving. As it appeared, they died over a century apart. Community leaders allowed the graves to be exhumed and reveal their secrets. King Ingwe, or leopard, was found in one grave. In the other, located in the wives' living area, the remains of a woman of noble birth were discovered.
The male burial was dated to about 1480, somewhere around there.
The king didn't die there. He died somewhere else and they carried the bones. And the reason why they say that is because the bones were not intact like a human skeleton. You know, they were put together like a pie. And the reason why they carried him was that they believe that wherever they go, they will be protected.
So there's a 120 or so year gap between these two individuals. The female appears as if she possibly died in the settlement and was buried there.
The female figure was around 50 years old when she died. She was buried on her side in the Losha position, with hands placed under the left side of her face. This, along with the gold items in her grave, is a sign of respect and nobility.
We can see in the burial of the woman that she's buried alongside a whole range of high-value goods. She's wearing gold, she's wearing necklaces, and she's got gold beads with her.
So why did the residents of this flourishing hilltop site leave their home? Theories range from traditions following the death of a ruler to an environmental disaster or a war over the control of land and resources.
Part of the mystery of Tullamela is that we don't know how it came to an end, why that site was abandoned, and that's part of what we hope to find out.
And so it's really at the cusp of colonialism that Tullamela was at its peak. So this is another big mystery, is how did that change the Tullamela kingdom? How did it influence its trajectory? Did it result in its decline? Did it aid in it becoming more politically strong over a certain period? We don't know.
This is a period of great turbulence in central Southern African history. It's a period after the decline of Great Zimbabwe. The Great Zimbabwe site is abandoned in around about 1500. We know that new states are emerging in the interior.
I think what are the mysteries is an interesting way to think about it, because there's so many little lines that we can go down. Where did Tullamela really come from? Why at the opening of the Luvubu River on this hill did all of a sudden this amazing and incredible capital and kingdom appear? Over what period did it appear?
So with appropriate research and attention, we can hopefully give a much clearer understanding of both why Tullamela became abandoned, and much earlier, how it emerged in the first place.
These questions are still unanswered. So much of Tullamela's history disappeared when it was abandoned, but the ongoing mystery is very much alive.
Yes, it has got a very special place in my heart. We were able to claim the land back. But instead of coming back here and do some other projects, we decided to keep it for conservation, so that people from all over the world can come and enjoy this place. And then for that reason, it is a special place, not only for me, but for the rest of the Makuleke people. We all love this place.
Okay, so thank you so much for sticking around and watching that with us. We really appreciate your time, and we really hope that you can share some of this experience with the guests that you have traveling with you, and really consider it for your itinerary planning. I'm available. I'm actually going to put my email address on the chat. Please feel free to reach out if you've not yet got STO rates, and I'm very happy to answer any questions that you might have. Our marketing collateral is available for you as you need. We're on Where To, as many of you know, you can use that for your itinerary building. Yeah, and please follow us on social media as well. We're really looking to build our database that way. And we look forward to any feedback or help that we can give you to secure more bookings. Thank you so much. And thank you to PJ and Harald as well for joining us today.
Cheerio.
Well, thanks to you, Nirvani, for pulling it all together. Thanks for everyone for attending. And we really look forward to hosting you. And if anyone is interested in contacting me personally, you're most welcome to do so. I love building these relationships. But thanks everyone for your attendance, your kind words that are coming through in the chat room, and especially to Nirvani for pulling it all together.
Thanks, everyone.